you can get to this place of feeling confident and polished, but it's going to be a rough ride, and that's part of the process. And I've been there too. Think about when you have the guidance on the front end to make sure your messaging is great, you're going to get exponentially more content out of it because you know precisely what to say, and the person you're working with is going to guide you.
So the best thing to do is just turn the camera on, have a conversation, and then at the end, let the editors do what the editors do. And there's lots of folks that love to sit there and put headphones on and listen to it at 3 times speed and go, ooh, that's good. And cut it out. And do it.
Hi, Derrick.
Welcome back. Welcome to this chaos.
Welcome
that is
to
production.
This world.
I know.
The excitement of production. It's my
exciting.
happy space.
This has been a fun day so far because what we've really been doing is sitting down with clients of my other business and, just talking with them and making videos for their internal purposes. Most of the videos you saw shot this morning are actually for the intranet for that company to talk to their employees about changes that they're making. And I think it's so important to do. And that's what I wanted to chat with you about today, because you and I have been figuring out ways to collaborate because you're doing a lot of coaching around speaking.
I am.
And of course, I'm doing a lot of podcasts. My 5th one launches here. The Realm of Possibilities, I think, launches in about 2 weeks. And that is all about marketing and advertising. And it's actually sponsored by AI Advertising, an ad agency out of Texas. But you and I have started to collaborate to say, how do we help companies do this? Right? How do we help them, number one, I guess, get coached on how to talk on camera? Maybe you can talk a little bit about your background, because I think maybe we've seen you on television or something before.
If you're here in the Valley, it's a possibility. Usually I'm in line at the grocery store and people say, they hear my voice and say, do our kids go to school together? Or do I know you from the gym? Yeah. And I ask them, well, maybe if you had your TV on in the past 10 years, it's probably where you know my voice from. I was on air here for a decade at the Fox 10 owned and operated station. Okay. And before that was in San Francisco with CBS, and my most fun broadcasting experiences had to do with dogs. You know, I love dogs, Derrick.
Likewise.
I worked with Animal Planet, Discovery, and Nat Geo. Yes, doing broadcasting for them as well. I didn't know that. Fun facts we learn about each other every day.
Absolutely. Well, so tell me a little bit about your business now, because you're no longer on-air talent on a regular basis, other than ta-da right here. But you have a business that is helping executives and people that need to be on camera, that need to give speeches, that need to work on their communication skills. And we all do.
Absolutely.
Even those of us, actually the people that are on camera the most are probably the best clients, because they're the ones that want to learn how to get better.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about that business. And then let's talk a little bit about how we're going to incorporate that into the work that I'm doing and that we're going to start doing together.
Sure. You have seen it everywhere. Just because we know how to talk doesn't mean we know how to communicate or we know how to speak well. Yeah. And although there is a huge shift in the adoption of AI and the fact we're using avatars to represent ourselves, we still want and need that human connection. There is no better tool to elevate your value and your brand than to speak to somebody and communicate that way. And what I noticed in interviewing thousands of people as a journalist is that the people who made it to the top of their companies, to the top positions, weren't necessarily the best educated, didn't necessarily have the most impressive credentials, but because they were good communicators, because they could communicate their value and the value of the company they worked for, they rose through the ranks. So this bell went off in my head, and the part of me that loves to teach and coach at the core thought, I'm not serving people as well as I can by just broadcasting. Yes, I reached a lot of people, had a great career, but I could serve a lot more people if I help them individually elevate their value and get the recognition that they deserve. So that's my goal in coaching people, whether it's executives or teams. Every time that we speak, we are public speaking. Yeah. There's this misconception that public speaking is a stage. You're on stage, bright lights, microphone. You and I right now, if we're having a cold interaction and I'm trying to bring you in as a client or build trust, that's an opportunity to convey my message, my value, and make you feel important through the way that I communicate.
You have to have somebody else in the sideline that actually stands there and says, hold on a second, I like how you did this, but if you had just done this, how does that feel? Yes. And they go, oh, that's way better.
You can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. the delivery is the icing on the cake. It's important, but if your messaging is not clear, if you're not thinking of your audience and having empathy for where they're coming from, what they know and what they don't know, you can wax poetic all day about your expertise and it's falling on deaf ears. And that's the error I see a lot with experts in their fields. We have the pressure in our society to show that we're impressive with all we know. We do information dumps, we do data dumps, and it becomes pretty much an avalanche of information that we can't sort out what's important. So having clarity in your message, and then on top of that, delivering it with confidence and looking at those nonverbal cues, looking at what are the cues that instill trust. How can you speak in a way that makes people want to know more? So it's mindset, messaging, and delivery that makes an excellent communicator. Within media, when people are conducting an interview or you're participating in an interview and you're giving all the facts and stats and the information, the reporter is tuning out. Our brain is thinking, I've got to meet this deadline. What's the next story? So the trick, and this is applicable in any conversation, to grabbing someone's attention is to employ a technique called flagging. And this goes back to your statement about why this matters is, I'll send it to you later, Derrick. When you use a phrase like, if you remember one thing only from this conversation, or the area that we are most proud of as we move ahead in the next quarter, our brain that is distracted by, I've got to pick up my kids from school. What am I going to get at the grocery store? Shoot, I've got this work deadline. We're shaken out of it and we draw the listener back in.
Wow.
So it's something you use not just on TV. It's a TV technique technically, but you can use that in one-on-one conversations, in speeches. And I love the way that you've incorporated also storytelling. It's, I hate to beat a dead horse with say storytell, because it's been a trending topic for a decade. But I watch again and again accomplished, educated, really impressive people speak in a 5-minute presentation or an hour-long keynote. And you're thinking, I would rather be getting a root canal.
Yes, it's so true.
Because there's the lack of the humanity. We don't want to see you as perfect. We want to know where the bumps and bruises are along the way. And I, as a teacher and as a coach, I'm very transparent with my clients about some really fall on your face moments, because I need people to know and want them to know you can get to this place of feeling confident and polished, but it's going to be a rough ride, and that's part of the process. And I've been there too.
You know, I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of interviews with CEOs, and I can tell the ones that have been trained and the ones that have not been trained. And as I've been looking at expanding this business, because there's been this demand, I've been getting CEOs calling me and saying, hey, how can I do an interview? Will you host a podcast with me? Will you co-host? Will you host with me for the first 6 episodes till I get comfortable? You know, and I reached out to you and said, I can't be the host of every podcast.
Although we would love it, Derrick.
Although it would be wonderful if I was the host of every top podcast, I can't. So I had to reach out to you and say, hey, how can we collaborate on some of these things? And then I think, you know, your points were really good when we first sat down, and it was like, look, let's coach these folks first.
Yes.
Because why get on a podcast? Why spend the amount of money it takes to have a full professional crew here, and a makeup artist and a hair person and sound and all those kind of things? Why spend that money if you haven't tailored that message?
If you haven't done the pre-work.
So you've got to do that pre-work. And that's why I'm so excited to partner with you.
Well,
not just because it
likewise.
gives me another host, you know, as we just talked with a client a few minutes ago, and I'm like, she can handle this one, right? Because I'm doing so much.
I'd like to sleep more than 2 hours. Here, Kristy's going to help you.
Kristy's going to help in this, but also I think it's important in that setting. And I think in particularly when it comes to professionals like doctors and attorneys and accountants, they might be a little lingo heavy.
Absolutely. Acronyms, industry jargon, and also this leaning towards seeming so professional that often we lack a connection. And that's a trend too that I've seen. There's a shift in leadership and what it takes to be a successful leader. And that traditional model was someone who was more stoic, who was perfectly polished, maybe didn't show emotion. That doesn't fly anymore. So if that's the school of leadership that you've been walking through, the expectation now, especially as the younger workforce starts to get into management, is that you are authentic, you are real, you connect to me on this human level. And that's why I love the story about forks in the air, people listening, because I guarantee you, Derrick, if there was a list of speakers that day and others delivered, I've got my bullet points, here's my slides, they're going to, a year from now, remember that one story that you told.
it's so true. We just went through a branding exercise with my company, The Process Fixer. And one of the things that they asked was take a look at all your customers and figure out how many months it takes for them to become a customer.
Yeah.
And we actually went out and talked to customers, and we found that it's 32 months on average for somebody to go through our process. Now, it's interesting when I talked to those CEOs and I said, why did you call us? Every one of them said the same thing. Well, I heard you speak a few years ago, and there was this one thing that you said, and I could never get, like, it was just like every time I was cutting the lawn, every time I was cleaning the pool, every time I was cycling, I was like, dang, man, I wonder if, like it was a pattern interrupter.
Yes.
Right. And it took them out of, it was a piece of truth that they were like, I wonder why I've never heard that from my people. Maybe I don't have the right perspectives. And over time, that wore on them, and they eventually called. We recently just had one, and I know we're going to have him on the show, but we had a customer call and say, hey, I'd like you to come speak to our whole executive team. We get there and I'm ready for the presentation. And he stands up and says, so we've hired these guys to help us in all these projects. And my partner says, they've hired us? And I said, they never told me anything about it. Literally, he says it in front of the entire executive team.
Your first day is now.
Yeah, he's like, they're starting next week. And we're like, we are?
Here we go.
But and again, it was almost 4 years since he heard the first talk.
Yes.
And then he came back and saw one a year ago, and he's read the books, and it was like he had bought the books for other people in the company. So our message had been there for a long time.
Yes.
And I think that's the power that we have today with YouTube and with podcasts and with all these other
these channels.
And it's not, to your point, it is not the polished brochure anymore. It is not the perfect website.
Yes.
It is the authenticity of the voice of the people in the organization. Kevin Myers, who I'm launching this show with here in the next 2 weeks, The Realm of Possibility, he showed up to the shoot. We shot for 6 hours and recorded a whole bunch of videos, almost 70 videos. And he said, I've wanted to do this for years and years and years. And, Kevin's famous. I mean, Cold Stone Creamery,
right.
He was Doug Ducey's partner and got that whole, he's very, very well known in the marketing business. And he's like, I make all this messaging for everybody else.
But what about my message?
What about my message?
What about my brand?
And he's like, and honestly, it's just failure to launch. He's like, I think about it all the time. But what I provided him was, he said to me, hey, could you help me do this? And I said, not only will I help you do it, I'll set up the shoot. We'll figure out the guests. We'll have the lunch there. I'll co-host with you. I'll prepare questions ahead of time.
The infrastructure's all in place.
All he had to do was show up and bring, I think he brought 9 or 10 pairs of Converse shoes, all in different colors.
The most important part, like, get a shot of the shoes.
Stop, new shoes. But that was really powerful to him. And then for us to deliver 70 videos to him and say, let us know if you need any edits. And he came back and he's like, there's just one thing I'd like to tweak. Out of 70 videos.
That's incredible.
He's like, you
Kudos
guys figured out how to take, and I don't want to take all the credit for that. I'm going to take most.
You should.
But we're going to give our director, Levi, just a little bit of credit.
We'll give Levi's round of applause.
Little round of applause for Levi too. Levi and his team and Tyler
are amazing.
And Karen and the whole team are amazing. So that's really what does it. But being able to just show up, sit there, have an interview, have a casual conversation like this, 3 weeks later to get your content for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
That you can repurpose in so many ways. So people go into a podcast thinking, okay, it's a podcast. Everyone has a podcast. It's the new calling card. If you do it well, it is not just that. It's a business development opportunity. It's a way for you to force you to sit down and develop your thought leadership. And that's where I love working with clients, is using those interviewing skills to get to the core of, what are you about? What are your values, not just within your company, but outside of your company? Why should people listen to you opposed to 1,000 other attorneys, 1,000 other doctors, 1,000 other CPAs? And so going through that process of being on the show with you and creating that content. Well, thank you. With us, we'll make a collective. Being on the show together is something that bears a lot of fruit. It isn't just, it's a podcast, we'll get some downloads. And the more that people see you, this goes back to the psychology piece, the more that people see you and hear your voice, the more they connect. It's the reason why, even though I haven't been full-time on air for over a year, I'll still have people stop me in a store and say, I watch you every single morning. And I don't have the heart to tell them I'm not on your screen in the morning anymore.
Your Nest, your Ring camera?
Well, I was just going to say, maybe it's creepy and I need to look into it. But they know the name of my dog. They know that I took that trip to a 3-year delayed trip to Egypt with my family.
Yeah.
So people there's a reason why in news, people turn to a certain station. They've all got pretty much the same content. If we're talking about local stations, national, that's a whole nother podcast episode for us.
Right.
But you feel connected to the individual. And it's no different with video content as an entrepreneur, as a part of a company. There's no richer way to make someone feel that they know you. And who do we want to do business with? The people who we know and trust. Yes.
I do think it's really important for organizations that are looking for content and thought leadership content. That might not even be external content. The last group that was just here, everything that we shot was for the employees. It was for the CEO to say, look, you've made your voices heard. Yes. I have heard you. We are investing in this technology.
Yes.
Now you have to get on the road with us and make sure that it works.
Us, yes.
And we have to understand it's not going to be all unicorns and rainbows just because I signed the check. It's going to take time and energy and effort. That's a great message to deliver to your people.
And much better than the newsletter or circulated email that we know everybody deletes. Totally. Nobody reads those things that are sent internally. But if you see the face of that CEO or someone that's within your C-suite or just someone you don't get to see frequently, suddenly you do feel like you have a connection.
The best way to record this, and I know Levi will attest to this as well, is to sit here with open mics and a coffee and just talk and let the editors do what editors do.
Let them do their brilliance.
I learned in my TV show that for every 22-minute episode, you shoot 22 hours of footage.
Oh yeah, I believe that.
And it's like, wow. So the best thing to do is just turn the camera on, have a conversation, and then at the end, let the editors do what the editors do. And there's lots of folks that love to sit there and put headphones on and listen to it at 3 times speed and go, "Ooh, that's good," and cut it out and do it. That's what
is
they
a
do.
job.
They love to do it, right?
I don't love to do it, so I'm glad that they do.
I don't either. I don't like to do it, but there are people that love to do it. My nephew is one who's one of my editors for a lot of my podcasts. He just loves it. He just thinks it's the coolest thing ever because he's sitting there getting MBA every day for 3 or 4
listening
hours
to
of
these
podcast.
experts.
And he's like, wow, this is really incredible information. So I think really that's what we're saying is if you are a CEO or you're an organization or a nonprofit that's saying, we need to figure out how to get our message out there and we need to do it in a way that really is relatable to people. And we need help. We need somebody that can carry the conversation and ask us the questions and coach us and get us there and then deliver all the product to us at the end.
It's end to end.
We can do it.
It's beautiful. Think about when you have the guidance on the front end to make sure your messaging is great, you're going to get exponentially more content out of it because you know precisely what to say and the person you're working with is going to guide you. It's like the scene out of a legal drama where you can tell that the lawyer's teeing up the question to get a certain answer. We'll make it less obvious than that, but it just gives you a format where you are set up to succeed.
I love it. Kristy, thank you for being here. And
Derrick,
I'm glad that we did
I'm
this.
excited for this.
And listen, if you're interested in this, reach out to Kristy or I. We can help you with this whole entire thing. That is what we do. We're doing it all day here. We love it.
This is why I get up in the morning every day is to support people in this way. And to have you as a teammate, I'm thrilled.
All right.
Woohoo is right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Derrick.